Hey everyone, welcome. Before we dive into this story, I want to know, where are you watching from? Let me know your city in the comments. And here's a question for you. Have you ever experienced a situation where you caught a cheating wife? Maybe it happened to you, a friend, or someone you know. If you have a story, feel free to share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now, let's get into the story. Before all the chaos unraveled, before I found myself standing in that courtroom with my life hanging by a thread, there was a time when everything felt simpler, more predictable. Stonemore was never a town that promised excitement, but it had always given me a sense of stability, even if that stability was built on routine and blind trust. Back in high school, Bruce and I had a different kind of friendship, one forged in the reckless misadventures of youth. He wasn't the straight-laced preacher back then, just another kid who wanted to escape his father's impossible expectations. I still remember the night we broke into Mr. Greenlee's scrapyard, determined to hotwire an old Pontiac just to see if we could. We failed miserably, nearly got our asses handed to us when the old man's dog came chasing, and spent the rest of the night hiding in a ditch, laughing until our sides hurt. That was Bruce, hesitant but willing, always one step behind me, but never afraid to follow. Things started shifting after he met Cheryl at Bible college. His letters, because, Bruce actually wrote letters back then, began sounding more like sermons than updates. He stopped swearing, started praying before meals, and, worst of all, traded our Friday night beer runs for theological debates. I thought it was a phase. I thought, eventually, he'd loosen up, get over his holier-than-thou streak, and we'd go back to being just two idiots who had each other's backs. But when he came back to Stonemore with Cheryl, ready to build a life as a man of God, I realized something. I had lost my best friend to something I couldn't compete with, righteousness. Mr. Erickson, another word out of you and I'll hold you in contempt. The judge's face turned a blotchy shade of crimson, her expression so exaggerated that I had to fight the urge to laugh. Mr. Young, control your client, she snapped, exasperated. I'd heard the same warning before, but when swearing comes as naturally as breathing and the person in charge is a joke, staying quiet isn't exactly easy. People say I curse more than anyone they know. Maybe they're right. It's not a conscious choice. It just happens. Before I could fire back, my attorney, Bert Young, who, if everything went according to plan, would soon be my partner at his firm, gave me a look that needed no translation. Shut your mouth unless you want to spend the night in a holding cell. Even the court reporter was struggling to keep a straight face, probably expecting me to unload a barrage of expletives. Across the courtroom, 3 people sat stiffly, avoiding my gaze. Bruce, my ex-best friend, looked worn down. Robin, my soon-to-be ex-wife, carried the weight of humiliation on her face. And Cheryl, Bruce's wife, radiated pure fury, likely because every ugly detail of their mess was now public record. How did I end up here, being lectured by a judge I barely respected in a courtroom filled with people I used to trust? Let's rewind. My name's Jack Erickson. I'm 32, a foreman in the city maintenance department of Stonemore, Colorado. I took the job 2 days after high school and never left. In the winter, I clear snow-covered roads. In the summer, I take care of whatever needs fixing. Robin, when she isn't busy pretending to be the perfect churchgoer, works a few hours at the local chapel, mostly, I suspect, to justify not doing much at home. Our department is divided into 4 quadrants, each overseen by a supervisor and a foreman. I never aimed for a supervisor role. Not my thing. Didn't have a college degree, and even if I did, I wouldn't kiss the necessary asses to move up. That Monday night, a brutal summer storm tore through town, leaving a disaster behind. Fallen branches, scattered debris, flooded streets. I had 6 crews running dump trucks, 2 vac trucks unclogging storm drains, and 4 street sweepers on constant rotation. By the afternoon, I was inspecting back alleys, realizing mowing would have to wait. Robin and I lived in a modest 4-bedroom house in an old but decent neighborhood. Not exactly luxury, but nowhere near rough territory. We had great neighbors, Tom and Jerry McBain next door, Ron and Cindy behind us, and Bruce and Cheryl Harris directly behind them. Bruce had been my best friend since middle school. We never even bothered with fences, that's how close we all were. Bruce and I had been inseparable as kids. I dragged him into more trouble than he could handle, and his ultra-religious parents hated me for it. Not that I cared. He grew up to be a preacher. I grew up avoiding church altogether. Robin, on the other hand, never skipped a Sunday. Bruce met Cheryl at Bible college. She had the kind of looks that could land her on a magazine cover, but the devotion of a saint. He was my opposite in almost every way, but I would have done anything for him, or so I thought. Tuesday night, I got home, exhausted, ready to warm up Sunday's meatloaf for dinner. Not that I minded, but Robin hadn't cooked a fresh meal in months. I considered cracking open a 12-pack, but a red mark on the calendar reminded me, emergency standby. 1 beer with dinner, that was the limit. Robin showered while I ate, as distant as ever. Our marriage had become little more than forced small talk and the occasional lackluster Saturday night routine. Missionary only. I had checked out months ago. By 10, I was debating whether to crash early when my phone buzzed. Probably Bruce, ready to complain about the Rockies' latest game or ask for a favor at his church. It wasn't. City Dispatch reported a water main break near Birchwood Mall. I grabbed my gear, considered letting Robin know, then decided against it. Didn't seem like she cared where I was anyway. At the yard, I prepped a dump truck, hooked up a backhoe, and met up with my crew, guys from every quadrant, plus a water supervisor and his team. When we arrived, the street was already a lake, so we called in a vac truck to start draining the mess. By 1 a.m., I had the pavement broken open. By 3, the pipe was exposed. By 9:30, the repair was complete. By noon, we were set for repaving. I got everything back to the yard by 1 p.m., exhausted but satisfied. At 1:45, I pulled into my driveway, finally off duty until Friday. The house was quiet. Robin was gone, off doing whatever she did all day, which wasn't housework. I grabbed a beer, made a sandwich, and then I heard it. Moaning. Loud, intense, unmistakable. I froze, my grip tightening around the bottle. The sound was coming from upstairs. I muttered under my breath, "So that's why you've been distant," and reached into the coat closet. My fingers curled around my Kimber .45. Hard pounding, I crept up the stairs. The master bedroom? Empty. The bathroom? Nothing. 2 doors left. The guest room was shut. At least she had the decency to keep it out of our bed. I kicked the door open, tool ready. Nothing. One option left. Her so-called craft room. I braced myself, imagining some random guy behind her, hands gripping her waist. My hold on the tool tightened as I kicked the door open. Empty. But the noise was deafening. Then I saw the open window. I stepped forward, expecting to see Robin tangled up with some lowlife in our backyard. What I saw was worse. Tom and Brenda McBain, brother and sister, going at it like they weren't related, right by their pool. My stomach churned. Brenda had a crush on me since she was 12. Now she was in college and, well, she'd definitely grown into herself. But that didn't change the fact that I was witnessing straight-up inbreeding. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Then I saw movement in the window across the yard. I followed Brenda's gaze. Bruce, undressed, on top of someone, not Cheryl, Robin, my wife. The realization hit like a truck. "Holy hell!" I roared. Everything stopped. Brenda and Tommy scrambled inside, still undressed, their shame barely registering. I turned back, my tool shaking in my grip, but Bruce's window was now empty. "You cheating lie!" My voice cracked with rage as I stormed downstairs. In the den, I grabbed my Mossberg bullpup and loaded it with 0.0 buckshot. Bruce was a dead man. Robin was done. Hell, even Cheryl's cat and parakeet weren't safe. I stomped toward the door, ready to kick it in and turn them both into Swiss cheese. But halfway down the driveway, I stopped, breathing hard, gripping the rifle. Everything clicked. The messy house, the frozen dinners, the lack of affection, the constant long showers. It all made sense. I climbed into my truck, slammed the door shut, and tore out of the driveway, heading straight for Lovis. My thoughts were running wild, each one more infuriating than the last. She didn't cook because Bruce had drained her. She didn't clean because she was too busy playing house with him. But the real question was, why? Why betray me? Why throw everything away? At Lowe's, I grabbed 3 new lock sets, barely registering the familiar faces around me. Jeannie from the paint section waved, but I barely nodded in response. Small talk wasn't on my list of priorities. Back home, I spotted Tommy and Brenda loitering near my driveway, both looking like kids caught sneaking out past curfew. Brenda attempted a weak smile. Mr. Erickson, we didn't mean to..." I cut her off with a cold stare. "I don't care what you two do. Screw each other until you fall apart. It's got nothing to do with me." They scurried off, though Brenda glanced at my hips before disappearing inside. I dropped the locks on the counter, grabbed my toolbox, and headed for the front door to start replacing them. But the moment I stepped into the kitchen, my whole body tensed. Bruce, sitting at my table. I stopped cold. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" His expression was calm, too calm. "I came to talk. As a friend." I laughed, sharp, bitter, humorless. A friend? You mean the kind that screws my wife behind my back? Jack, let's not turn this into something worse. Oh, you're absolutely right. I slid a butcher knife across the table toward him. Pick it up. His face lost all color. Go on, Bruce. You talk about faith all the time. How about you meet your maker? His eyes darted between me and the knife before he shot out of his seat, making a beeline for the door. On the porch, he turned back. We've been through a lot, man. Are you really throwing away our friendship over this? I gritted my teeth, tightening my grip on the tool at my hip. I lost 2 people today, but the more I think about it, the less it feels like a loss. He hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. Robin's scared to come over. She's got 5 minutes. If she wants any shot at saving what's left of this marriage, she'd better get here. Bruce nodded once before scurrying off. And like clockwork, 4 minutes later, I heard soft sniffling outside. Robin walked up the sidewalk, eyes red, face streaked with tears. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. Her bottom lip trembled. Jack, I love you. I don't want anyone but you. I let out a humorless chuckle. Funny way of showing it. Let's take this inside. No need to put on a public performance. She followed me in and perched on the love seat, hands clasped like she was praying for a miracle. Can you sit with me? Not a chance. I wasn't in the mood for a dramatic pause, so I cut straight to it. How long has this been going on? She hesitated. Jack, he's my friend. Friends don't sleep with each other's wives. It's just Zex, she whispered. I still love you. I scoffed. Yeah? And I love steak, but if it makes me sick, I sure as hell won't eat it again. There's no reason to be mad, she pleaded. You still have me. No, I said flatly. I had you. You threw that away. Her voice wavered. We can still be together. I'll just... She hesitated, glancing at the clock. Keep sleeping with Bruce. I blinked. Come again? He says I can still take care of your needs once or twice a week. I stared at her, struggling to believe what I'd just heard. Then I let out a dry chuckle. Well, aren't you too generous? But I think I'll find someone else to handle my needs. Her eyes darkened. No, you're mine. No one else should touch you. I shook my head, my patience snapping. Not for long. Ex-wife suits you better. Don't talk like that, she begged. I love you and Bruce, but only for Zex. You just need to understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. You want the best of both worlds. You want me for security and him for fun. It's not like that, she protested. Then explain it to me. She checked the clock again. Bruce wants me back in 3 minutes. My jaw clenched. Are you hearing yourself? Do you even realize how insane you sound? Tears welled in her eyes. You've never talked to me like this before. What happened to you? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the fact that I worked a 36-hour shift, came home exhausted, and found my wife screwing my best friend? She let out a choked sob, backing toward the door. That's it, I said, my voice flat. Go to him. Go get what you really want. She hesitated. I don't see why we can't keep things as they are. You're barely home. I can be his while you're at work, and 4 or 5 nights at... I slammed the door so hard the walls shook. Screw you, Robin. Go enjoy your damn cake. I stood there for a long moment, breathing heavily, heart pounding. But I wasn't about to sit around drowning in self-pity. I changed every lock, reset the garage code, and by 4 p.m., exhaustion finally caught up with me. I collapsed onto the couch, flipping on the TV. Jerry Springer. Figures. I let out a dry chuckle before sleep overtook me. When I woke up, it was past 9 and someone was knocking. I opened the door. Bruce. I exhaled sharply. What the hell do you want? I need a favor, he said. I crossed my arms. Well, if this doesn't beat all, I don't even have a new girlfriend yet for you to screw over, buddy. Try someone else. It's Robin, he muttered. She's over there crying. Can't you just call her? Tell her you're not mad? I scoffed. Since she loves you so much, you deal with her. I'm done. Bruce hesitated. Cheryl knows. She's actually fine with it. At least now we don't have to sneak around anymore. But she still thinks you and Robin should stay together. I stepped forward, lowering my voice. Get the hell off my porch. Tell Robin her crap will be on the curb by morning. And if I hear one more knock at my door, you won't like how I answer. I slammed the door in his face and grabbed a beer. For some reason, I carried a 6-pack upstairs to Robin's old craft room, settled into a chair by the window, and stared across the yard at Bruce's house. Then it hit me. I needed proof for the divorce. I grabbed my camcorder and waited. Movement next door caught my eye. Jerry McBain by the pool. I prayed she had a swimsuit under that robe. God wasn't feeling generous, She stripped and dove in. I turned away, groaning. Then I saw Cheryl and Robin on Bruce's porch swap, talking in hushed voices. Headlights flashed. Tom was home from his shift at the restaurant. He walked straight to the pool, stripping off his shirt. I ran a hand down my face. What the hell did I do to deserve this day? I tried to keep my attention on Bruce's house, but the loud splash of water shattered my focus. Tom had just dived into the pool, resurfacing beside Jerry. They drifted together, locked in an embrace. Their conversation floated through the night air. "How was work?" Jerry asked casually. "Absolute chaos," Tom replied with a sigh. "Had to let Juan go. Caught him smoking dope on break," Jerry hummed in acknowledgement. "You warned him." "I did," Tom admitted. "But still, it sucks." He shifted the topic. "Anyway, I heard something interesting today." "Oh?" Jerry's curiosity piqued. "Spill." "Jack kicked Robin out," Tom revealed. "What?" Jerry's voice sharpened with genuine surprise. "Yeah," Tom continued. "Tommy and Brenda saw Bruce and Robin messing around, right through his window. Jack must have walked in on them, lost his mind, stormed off, came back with a bag from Lowe's and changed the locks. When Robin got home, he slammed the door in her face and called her a hoe." Jerry exhaled sharply. "Unreal. I should check on Jack." Tom's voice lowered. "Honestly, I'd keep my distance from Bruce if I were you. Something about the way he looks at you, and Robin, has always rubbed me the wrong way." A chill ran down my spine. Sick creep. "Brenda's bringing Jack a cake tomorrow," Tom continued. "She likes the guy. Says he's rough around the edges, but solid. I actually saw him working near the mall this morning," Jerry said. "Hard hat and all?" "Yep," Tom chuckled. "You and your thing for construction workers." "Maybe I should get Jack to model for me," Jerry teased. I shuddered. For years, I'd wondered if Tom and Jerry were a couple. Now, I wasn't so sure I wanted the answer. "You're terrible," Jerry laughed. "I just don't get why Robin chose Bruce over Jack." Jerry smirked. "Careful, you're starting to sound jealous." Tom's voice softened. "You know you're my one and only." That was my cue to check out before things got any weirder. Sleep wasn't likely, but at least I could avoid the mental image of Tom and Jerry getting cozy. I switched on the radio. Late-night grindcore. Cannibal Corpse came on. "Make them suffer." My fists clenched. "Make them suffer." I whispered it at first. Then I said it louder. "I will, Corpse Grinder, I will." The next morning, a loud pounding at the door yanked me out of sleep. I yanked it open, ready to unleash hell on Robin, but instead, I found myself staring at Cheryl Harris. I sighed. "Oh, it's you. If you're here for Robin's stuff, it's not packed yet." Her expression was tight. "Jack, let her come back." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "And here I thought you were about to ask for something reasonable." I moved to shut the door, but she wedged her hand in. "Jack, why are you doing this? She's hurting." I crossed my arms. She made her choice. I'm stepping aside. "She can't stay with us," Cheryl argued. "We have an image to uphold." I scoffed. "Maybe you should have thought about that before dragging her into whatever twisted little arrangement you and Bruce have going on." Cheryl's eyes narrowed. "Why can't she just stay here?" I let out an incredulous laugh. "Are you serious? She chose Bruce over me. And the best part, you don't even care." "She still loves you," Cheryl pressed. "We all love you, Jack." My jaw tightened. "Bruce is dead to me. So is she." "You don't mean that?" I smirked. "Oh, but I do." Cheryl inhaled sharply. "She's still willing to take care of you, you know?" I clapped my hands together mockingly. "Oh, so let me get this straight. I pay all the bills, she keeps screwing you two, and in return I get a half-hearted tug once a week? Meanwhile, Bruce gets his little harem and I foot the bill?" I stepped closer, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or do I at least get some quality time with you?" She sneered. "Sorry, Jack. I'm a one-man woman." I chuckled dryly. "Man, I'd love to meet one of those. Guess I'll have to go find her myself." I pointed to the curb. "Tell Robin her junk will be out there in an hour." Cheryl's expression darkened. "Stop acting like a caveman. Bruce and I have reputations to protect." I smirked. "Sounds like your problem." I slammed the door and headed to the kitchen. Bacon sounded good. Screw their reputation. They actually thought I'd just roll over and accept this? Not happening. Make them suffer. The phrase looped in my head. I grabbed my phone and called a guy from work. His divorce had been brutal. His wife had been screwing her own brother. Real-life Jerry Springer stuff. He gave me the number of a law firm that specialized in making sure men didn't get screwed over. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. By noon, I had an appointment. While I waited, I packed Robin's stuff, dumped it on the porch, and slid her car keys under the mat. No excuses for her to knock. Then I went to the bank, canceled the credit cards, closed the joint account, opened a new one in my name. The banker mentioned Robin had a separate card. No problem. I had them redirect the bill to Bruce's address. At 1 p.m., I walked into the law office hoping to land David Crosby, legendary for annihilating opposing attorneys. Instead, I got Burt Young, scruffy guy, looked like he hadn't met a razor in weeks. But his record? Impeccable. He skimmed my documents, called in his paralegal, and rattled off instructions. She left, returning minutes later with a thick stack of paperwork. Burt leaned back in his chair and addressed Mr. Erickson with a confident smirk. "I think we can get you everything you want, and take that preacher down a peg while we're at it." Mr. Erickson's gaze sharpened. "Do you have any photo or video evidence?" Burt shook his head. "No, but the neighbor kids saw them. I just want her gone." Flipping through the files, Burt nodded. "That'll work. We'll move fast." After explaining the paperwork, he handed me a checklist. I'd already knocked out most of it. After paying his retainer, I went home to get some rest. When I got back, Robin's stuff was gone. A note was taped to the door. I peeled it off, walked inside, and stretched out on the couch. Jerry Springer was on. I smirked. How fitting. The note was exactly what I expected. Robin begging to come back. No mention of cutting Bruce loose. Burt and I agreed she and Bruce should be served at church on Sunday. The idea was too good to pass up. I decided to attend just to watch the show. My answering machine was blinking furiously. Over 50 messages. I deleted them all. That night, after a few beers, I finally slept like a rock. The next morning, I set out to ruin Bruce. I called city accounting. My crews had hauled free gravel to Bruce's church, and I had the tier slips to prove it. Janice assured me the bill would be marked unpaid. Bruce was about to get a collections call for $7,500. Then I casually asked the water company supervisor if Bruce's church had a compliant meter. They didn't. That meant a $1,200 replacement fee. Bruce had no idea how much I'd shielded him from before. That was about to change. Make them suffer. I was going to bankrupt the creep. By noon, I got the call I'd been waiting for. "What the hell are you pulling, Jack?" Bruce growled through the phone. I kept my tone even. "No idea what you mean. The inspector says I have to rip up my whole damn parking lot. You told me it'd be fine." I smirked. "Oops. Guess I forgot to submit some paperwork, but don't worry, I'll be reprimanded." "I hope they fire you." Right then, my supervisor walked into my office, already guessing who I was talking to. He leaned against my desk with a knowing grin. "Jack, about that missing paperwork, remind me to put a scathing post-it in your file," he said. I chuckled. "I'll need a post-it to remind me. Just don't do it again." Bruce practically seethed on the other end. "Oh, some reprimand, Jack. He didn't even fine you a nickel." I leaned back in my chair, still grinning. "Yeah, but he did process my tier slips. So, expect a bill?" Bruce hung up. The rest of my day was normal until I hit Mobby's bar for a few beers. Mobby's was a hotspot for city workers and cops, and by 11, half the bar had heard my story, either from me or someone else. And just like that, a full-blown maltreatment campaign was in motion. One of my cop buddies joked that Bruce might get pulled over more often. A firefighter friend decided Bruce's church was due for a fire safety inspection. "These churches always have code violations," he said. "We usually go easy, but Tony will want to protect the congregation." Sheila Torres from the county clerk's office smirked. "Wouldn't be surprised if an error pops up in Bruce's property tax records. Maybe a past due amount. Make them suffer." By Saturday morning, I was in my garage, trying to work. My backyard was no escape. Between the half-undressed mutants next door and the swapping degenerates behind them, it was anything but peaceful. I was restoring a cabinet when I felt someone watching me. I knew exactly who it was. Robin. I turned, ready to tell her to get lost, but locked eyes with Brenda instead. "Hi, Mr. Erickson," she said, her voice too sweet. "What do you need, Brenda?" She handed me a USB stick, her fingers lingering longer than necessary. I forced my gaze off her barely covered body and back to her face. "I recorded something last week. Thought it might help your case." "I'll check it out." She turned to leave, but glanced back, her eyes unreadable. "It's my pleasure to help, Jack. Have a good one." I frowned. She'd never called me anything but Mr. Erickson before. Pocketing the drive, I finished mowing my lawn, enduring Robin's wailing from Bruce's balcony the whole time. I hoped Tom and Jerry would call the cops. Instead, their family bailed inside, avoiding the drama. By 5, I was at Joe's Pit BBQ for their famous ribs. As I ate, John Brandon, Cheryl's brother, walked in. He was an engineer with the City County Roads Department. We'd worked together plenty, but I wasn't sure where he stood in all this. I kept my head down, hoping to go unnoticed, but after placing his to-go order, John stopped at my table. "Jack." I looked up. "John." "Long time." He let out a tired sigh. "Been busy. Every time we clean up after a storm, 2 more roll in." "Yeah, we're opening bids next week for the Johnson Street Bridge," I said. "Your crew should get some work." "That'd be nice," John admitted. "Got 100 potholes and 3 busted irrigation systems to fix." We made small talk for a bit before he got to the point. "I hear my brother-in-law's church has some serious drainage issues," he said, his tone casual but pointed. "Sounds expensive." I smirked. "Yeah, I guess so." John clapped my shoulder. "Glad someone's finally making that dirtbag pay. Remind me never to piss you off." He left with his food. I finished my meal, grabbed a bottle of vodka from Chang's Liquor, and headed home. Just as I settled in, I remembered Brenda's USB. Plugging it in, I opened the only file. The screen filled with Brenda, leaning out of her bedroom window, her fingers working furiously between her legs. I cringed. Then I heard my lawnmower. She had been watching me mow the lawn while doing that. Jesus Christ. Tommy walked in. "Hold up. Are you Jack turbating?" I nearly puked. Brenda moaned. "I am, Tommy. Pretend you're him. Screw me like you mean it." I skipped ahead. I'd had enough of their twisted crap. Then I saw why she gave me the video. Tommy zoomed in on Bruce, Robin, and Cheryl, engaged in an intimate encounter on their terrace, 50 yards from my house, right under my nose. But now, I had proof. I made a call. The video would serve another purpose before we ever got to court. Make them suffer. For the first time in years, I was up early on a Sunday, ready for church. Coffee, bagel, and then off to Vinewood Presbyterian. I arrived 20 minutes early. In the parking lot, I spotted 3 other guys who, like me, weren't regulars. Inside, I slid into the 3rd pew, just another face in the crowd. I caught the eye of Robert Donovan, the church's AV guy. He worked on my park crew and owed me a favor. I checked the bulletin. The perfect moment would be right after the offering. The choir entered. Cheryl and Robin walked in together, clueless. Bruce followed, rambling about forgiveness. I nearly laughed. He knew I was here. Funny, he skipped the 7th commandment. We sang a few Jesus songs. Then the offering plates went around, eventually landing in Robert's hands. He'd count the cash while Bruce preached, ensuring Anne, the secretary, could deposit it later. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Bruce stood at the pulpit, welcoming new guests, as was tradition. He invited visitors to introduce themselves. My 3 guys rose and walked forward. A kid next to me nudged my arm. "You're new too, mister." His mom smacked him on the back of the head. I chuckled. Bruce smiled and shook hands with my guys. A young brunette spoke first. "I'm here to see Cheryl Harris." Cheryl frowned, stepping forward. The next guy, a pimply-faced redhead, took the mic. "I'm here to see Robin Erickson." Robin hesitated, then joined Cheryl. Then Neil Young, the boss's son, took the mic. "Bruce Harris, Cheryl Harris, and Robin Erickson, you've been served." They shoved legal papers into the cheater's hands. Bruce's face turned red. He snatched his mic back. "Why have you defiled my sanctuary?" Right on cue, Robert hit play. The church projector lit up, showing Bruce, Cheryl, and Robin undressed on their terrace. Gasps erupted. At least 5 old ladies fumbled for their jitterbug phones. The cops would be here soon. Then out of nowhere, an old lady hobbled forward and racked Bruce in the nuts with her cane. Pure chaos. Robin shrieked. Then suddenly she turned and saw me. She ran straight for me. Bruce, still doubled over, wasn't running anywhere, not even if the Nazis were coming to throw him in an oven. I bolted for the exit, only to run straight into a cop. A few days later, after the dust settled and the DA refused to press charges against me, Bruce had a privacy fence installed, the same one required by his newly granted restraining order. I wasn't allowed within 100 feet of his church unless it was city business, but the order also prevented him from maltreating me. Even better, Robin was included and they could only contact me through my lawyer, Bert Young. When I told Sonny Bono, our assistant DA, how I'd slipped the USB stick into the collection plate for Robert to find, he actually laughed. Bruce had screamed for trespassing charges, but since the church was public property, he had no case. Robert lost his job, but landed a better one at the Presbyterian church across town. Bruce, likely trying to minimize attention to the scandal, didn't fight it. 2 days later, Bert called. "We're in front of Judge Sonia Kagan in 2 weeks," he said. "She's a hard A. Tends to favor wives, but since you already own the house, she can't screw you too much. What about alimony? That's the part I don't like. She always awards it, even to cheaters. At work, things were smooth. My boss was fresh out of college and smart enough to leave me alone. 2 other quadrant supervisors were decent. They didn't micromanage, but worked alongside their crews. Then there was Marvin Taylor. Marvin was the worst quadrant supervisor. Didn't trust his leads, didn't help his crews. The kind of guy you avoided if you saw him coming. Most guys said they'd rather pluck their ball hair with pliers than deal with him. Some thought he had dirt on someone at City Hall. Others swore he was the mayor's secret boyfriend, the only logical reason he kept his job. Unfortunately, today was my lucky day. Marvin strolled into my office, plopping into a chair. "So, Jackie boy, I hear you're getting a divorce," he sneered. "She catch you screwing the cat?" I wasn't about to tell this dirtbag the truth. "Nah," I said. "Just got tired of her nonsense." "You got a judge yet?" "Yeah, Kagan." Marvin snorted. "That hag? She screwed my boy over. Gave his brother Love and X the house, the kids. Now Jeff gets to pay for both." I sighed. Marvin never thought before speaking. In just one sentence, he'd managed to insult 2 races. I wondered if he ever talked like this around Jimmy Raines. Jimmy was Marvin's foreman. 6'5", 240 pounds of former Giants linebacker. The man looked like he'd eliminate you for looking at him wrong, but after a couple of beers, he was a riot. One night at Mobby's, Jimmy decided to mess with some frat boys. Every time one of them got up for the bathroom, he followed, arms crossed, just staring. They all left without ever using it. Zeke, the massive bartender, finally told him to stop scaring the college kids and bought us a free pitcher for the entertainment. Yeah, Jimmy was hilarious, but I doubted he'd find Marvin's N-word habit as funny. Luckily, Jimmy saved me from more nonsense. He appeared in my doorway, arms crossed. "Marvin, let's go. New guys screwed up the storm drain installation again." Marvin groaned but got up. "Damn fools. Gotta do everything myself." As they left, I silently thanked Jimmy for his perfect timing. Too bad he wouldn't be able to save me from my date with Judge Kagan 2 weeks later. "What kind of commie pinko nonsense is this?" Judge Sonia Kagan didn't flinch as I exploded. This witch had just granted my ex's request for couples counseling. When I flat out refused, she threatened me with jail. I turned to Bert. "Come on, dumbass. Tell her therapy ain't happening. I just want to be rid of this skank and her preacher's ex-pals." Bruce slumped like he wanted to disappear. Cheryl glared daggers. If looks could eliminate, I'd be meeting St. Peter. Bert had subpoenaed Bruce and Cheryl as witnesses. They'd fought it, but after being threatened with failure to appear charges, they had no choice. Their congregation had dwindled to 10 clueless members, likely sticking around for the next scandal. The once 20-member choir was now Cheryl Robin and old man Charles Brown, who looked one hymn away from a heart attack. Then Robin stepped forward and started spewing her excuses. "It was just Zex," I scoffed. "Would she buy that excuse if I'd been caught with her best friend Becky? Jack works a lot, and I felt neglected," she added. "Nonsense. I worked 7-4, Monday through Friday. In the past year, I'd been called away 4 times. My first time with Bruce was just curiosity," she admitted. "I heard he was bigger than normal." I rolled my eyes. Curiosity. Classic skank excuse number 3. Right after neglect, and it was just Zex. Tuning her out, I thought back to when I first met her. Homecoming at Southern Colorado State was legendary. Nobody cared about the actual game. It was all about the parties. The biggest? Willie Barnes' annual bonfire. Willie was 45, still throwing parties for drunk college girls. 5 years later, he got arrested. 6 of them accused him of attack. He got nailed for 3. That homecoming, Robin's junior year, was special. SCS actually won. I wasn't a student. I did city maintenance and part-time campus work to save for classes. Since the team won, cleanup got postponed. That meant I could party. By 11 p.m., I was buzzed. The parking lot was still full, but half the cars were rocking. Barns, sheds, pastures, probably full of fornicators. I stepped away to take a piss, found a car, unzipped, and let loose on the grill. Just as I finished, headlights clicked on. Inside, a brunette's head was still in some dude's lap. She looked right at me. "Oops, sorry," I muttered, tucking myself in and heading back to the bonfire. I had just cracked open a beer when I saw her again, same brunette. I slipped around the fire, avoiding her. The last thing I needed was to be called out as the guy who pissed on her dude's car. Unfortunately, some frat boys recognized me. "Jack, my man," they hollered, bro-hugging me. Funny thing, I only knew one of them. As they patted me on the back, I felt a hand brush my hip. The brunette. She walked away without a word. The next morning, getting dressed for work, I grabbed my wallet from my jeans, felt something in my other pocket. A note. "If you liked what you saw as much as I liked what I saw, call me. Robin." A number was scribbled below. I spent the day cleaning up homecoming debris, wondering if the note was real. By afternoon break, I called. A woman answered the phone. "Hi, may I speak to Robin?" I asked. "She's not here. Can I take a message?" I hesitated for a moment. Yeah. Just tell her the guy from the party called and that he liked what he saw." I left my number and hung up. That evening, my phone rang. "Yeah, I don't know your name, but I've seen your package. Should I just call you Moby Johnny?" I tensed. Crap. Had I just given my number to the wrong person? I forced a chuckle. "Jack will work just fine. Robin, right?" "Yeah," she confirmed. "Want to meet at Frankie's Inn in an hour?" I hesitated. Was I about to walk into a prank? "Screw it," I agreed. "Great," she said. "I'll be wearing..." She described her outfit, down to the earrings. I sat at Frankie's Cafe watching the door, left my Broncos jersey at home just in case I needed a fast exit. 20 minutes later, she walked in, dressed exactly as described, even hotter than expected. I waved. She spotted me, brows furrowing slightly, then made her way over, brushing off a few guys who tried stopping her. She sat down with a smirk. "Funny-looking Broncos jersey?" I shrugged. Didn't want to risk a prank. Her grin widened. "Afraid I'd catfish you? More like I wanted a quick escape if you weren't as advertised." She laughed. "Fair enough." We talked over coffee and pie until closing. Dated a month before things got serious. That Saturday, I knew it was time. I even called Bruce, told him I was getting serious. He gave me some speech about true love and not breaking hearts. Funny. 10 years later, he'd helped break mine. I chuckled at the irony. Apparently, I did it out loud because Robin and Dr. Landers were both staring at me. "Do you find Robin's pain amusing, Mr. Erickson?" "More like my own," I said. "I owe Gary Wayne an apology." Robin frowned. She never did anything with Gary, but she had gotten involved with Justin Laurie, the guy she was intimately with at that party, 2 days after their date. Rumor had it Gary wasn't sufficient for her. "Why would you owe him an apology?" she asked. "Because I punched him for telling the truth." Dr. Landers leaned in. "And what truth was that?" I smirked. "He called Robin Big Bird, always looking for a bigger limb to sit on." "I don't follow," Landers said. "She's a size queen." Robin turned bright red, silent, busted. "She dumped Gary for being small," I continued. "Then she took one look at me and dumped Justin. Now she's got Bruce. Because his meat's even bigger, it's all just filthy, stupid crap. If you say it's just Zex, I'll leave now. Do my jail time for contempt, then move to Afghanistan where adulterous witches get treated right." They both looked stunned. Landers collected herself. "Now, Robin, we must realize that Neanderthal thinking doesn't comprehend multiple partners in a happy marriage." I narrowed my eyes. "What the hell are you yammering about?" "A lot of happily married couples enjoy multiple partners," she said. "Some men, knowing they aren't enough, derive pleasure from sharing their wife with a superior specimen." My brain short-circuited. I had read about men who willingly took a back seat in their relationships, letting their partners seek fulfillment elsewhere while they remained on the sidelines. "There aren't enough pills in the world to make me enjoy that kind of nonsense," I said. "I don't care what those pathetic losers get off on. No way in hell am I watching my wife get pounded, and I'd put a bullet in her head before I'd ever clean her up afterward." "Now, Jack," Landers said calmly, "don't you think you owe it to your marriage to be open-minded?" "No one's saying you have to watch," Robin chimed in. "Although you could, if you wanted." "Yeah, Jack," she purred. "It'd be so hot, and I could even service you after..." I glared. "Screw you, ho. You think I want Bruce's sloppy seconds? I suppose next you'll tell me how hot it'd be for me to wear pink underwear while you and Bruce screw," I added. "Maybe even sleep in a cage at the foot of the bed?" Robin smirked. "Oh, no, Jack. We'd let you sleep in your own bed." I shot out of my chair. "I'm done. I'm out of here." The receptionist looked up, ready to call emergency. "Mr. Erickson," Landers said firmly, "you were ordered to attend these sessions. Walk out and you'll face jail time for contempt." I turned back and stared her down. "I've been here an hour. Tell the black-robed hag whatever you want. I don't give a rat's A. It'll be a cold day in hell before I get near that skank again." I jabbed a finger at Robin. And I'll be talking to my lawyers about getting your license pulled, you psychotic fraud. As I walked out, I felt better than I had in months. I stormed into Bert's office. His face fell. Tell me you didn't eliminate anyone, he sighed. I'd love to say yes, but no, I muttered. Probably said some things they won't like, though. I told him everything, how rehearsed the session felt, how the counselor was obviously biased. Jack, you're not the first to complain, Bert said, but any complaints get buried. I'd have warned you, but that'd be tampering. I'm not going back, Bert. That fat-ass Jabba the Hutt can jail me, but I'm not sitting through 3 more hours of that. Bert sighed. I'll have David Crosby make some calls. Stay out of trouble, Jack. We'll end this soon. I had 3 beers. I needed a drink. Flipping between Jerry Springer and pro wrestling, I probably looked like a real winner. By the time the ballgame came on, I was just the right amount of buzzed. Then, I heard thunder. I stepped outside. Dark storm clouds rolled over downtown. The air had a chill, a bad one. One of those nasty summer hailstorms was coming. Sure enough, the phone rang. But it wasn't about the hail. Flooding. My crew and I spent the night hauling sand and clearing debris. By 4 a.m., the river was threatening the dikes and Lime Road Bridge. The Army Corps of Engineers insisted the dike was fine. The county said the bridge was stable. While they talked, we got to work. By 9 a.m. Friday, I finally pulled into my driveway. No chance of catching my wife with Bruce this time, mostly because I didn't have a wife anymore and I no longer gave a damn whose Johnny she rode. Running on a mix of coffee and NOS energy drinks, I figured a shot of Jägermeister would knock me out. I downed the bottle and crashed on the couch. I woke up to knocking, checked my phone, 11 p.m. I looked outside. Brenda McBain. What the hell does she want? I opened the door. Sorry to bother you, Jack, she said, shifting her weight. But there's something I think you need to see. It might help with your divorce. I hesitated. What could she possibly show me? And then, for the first time, I noticed her eyes, striking gray. She said something I didn't catch and walked toward her car. Even running on autopilot, I understood. I was supposed to follow her. She got in. I slid into the passenger seat. We drove in silence. I caught myself staring at her long-toned legs. She noticed. Her smirk widened. Brenda pulled into an abandoned power plant parking lot. The city had bought up these buildings years ago. Developers tried bidding for them, but the city board always voted the deals down. Nobody knew why. Meanwhile, the city had spent a fortune on security. 2 years ago, they even built a 10-foot chain-link fence around the area. We parked, and something felt off. Too many cars. Brenda, why are we here? If we get caught, this is serious trouble. Just trust me, she said, stepping out. This is going to help you. I had no idea how trespassing would help my divorce, but I followed her. She led me to a cut section in the fence, then toward a basement window of the old King James Hotel. A sliver of light shone from inside. That wasn't possible. Power had been shut off years ago. I crouched, peered in, and gasped. Brenda handed me a camcorder. On the drive home, she explained how she and Tommy had been spying on Bruce and Robin. One night, they overheard them talking about this place, so they followed them. I nodded. So choir practice is a cover? She looked embarrassed. Don't worry. You and Tommy aren't part of this. Silence stretched between us before she suddenly blurted. You know, the only reason Tommy and I screw is because no one else wants us. I hadn't brought up their incest. Oh, that's not true, I lied. Maybe some guys would use me, she muttered, but no one wants to be seen with me. I hear the jokes, Jack. Butterface, you know, butcher body, butterface. I said nothing. They call me a 3-bagger. 1 on my head, 1 on his in case mine falls off, and a 3rd at the door in case someone walks in. I felt like crap. I'm good enough for Zex in the dark, but not to be dated. Brenda, come on, I said, forcing conviction into my voice. If I were your age, I'd be all over you. Total lie. But she had just handed me gold, and she was on the verge of tears. You've helped me out big time, I continued. Let me take you to dinner tomorrow. Get dolled up, I'll pick you up at 7. She hesitated. I'm going to Denver tomorrow. I won't be back until Sunday. No problem, rain check. A small smile. Deal. I got out and went inside. I had them exactly where I wanted. The next morning, I made a few calls. By Thursday, everything was in motion. I called Bert first. This could be considered extortion, he sighed. But I do think it'll work. No wonder that witch gets away with everything. Next, I called Mike Starr. We'd been buddies in high school. Now he was an investigative reporter. I handed him the video and details. I've heard rumors about this, he admitted. They also meet on Wednesdays. So what's the plan? He grinned. I stake out the hotel and bust them live on TV. Perfect. On Monday morning, I walked into the city maintenance director's office. I had a proposal, one that would solve a storage problem and cut off access to the King James Hotel. He liked it. Since the city owned the land, all we had to do was rezone it. No budget request needed, no city board interference. As I was leaving, he stopped me. "Jack, I'm recommending you for a promotion. You just saved us $500,000. By Wednesday, approvals were in place. I was put in charge. A 10-man crew. 3 weeks to get it done. Thursday morning, we started moving fencing material to the old power plant. At noon, I left. I had counseling with Dr. Landers at 1. I walked in early. The receptionist glared before buzzing me through. Landers sat behind her desk, smug as ever. "Mr. Erickson, I'm surprised to see you here. Early, even. One-on-one is new for you, huh?" She blinked. "Excuse me?" I crossed my arms. "I'm done with this sham. Not coming back. Not paying for it." She smirked. "Judge Kagan ordered these sessions. If you refuse, screw you. Choke on the biggest piece." Her eyes narrowed. "You're going to call Kagan and tell her the gig is up. I know about your little spouse swappers club at the King James." Her face drained of color. "I'm sure legal and ethics boards will love hearing how a family court judge and a marriage counselor run a damn sex club, especially when all the cheating wives seem to win in Kagan's court while their non-member husbands get screwed. There is no such, 'Shut up, witch. I saw you. I saw them. I saw the elk head wearing a fireman's hat with rubbers on its antlers." She turned ghost white. Mike Starr already had the footage. He also knew who had been blocking the property sales for years. Kagan and her husband were about to lose everything. I turned at the door. "Screw you," and I walked out.
I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as the door to Dr. Landers' office buzzed open. Jack was supposed to be here 10 minutes ago. Bruce and my attorney, Justin Bieber, yes, that was actually his name, had reassured me that Landers and Kagan would either persuade Jack to reconsider or at least stall long enough for him to give up. I had dressed with careful intention, shorter skirt, no stockings, my hair styled the way he used to like it, and the same perfume I wore on our last anniversary. But Jack was nowhere to be found. Dr. Landers seemed visibly unsettled. I assumed she had a personal emergency and had to cancel our session. Disappointment hit me hard. As much as I feared his resentment, I still wanted to see him. I wasn't even allowed near our old house anymore, couldn't even stand on the balcony if he was home. "Is Jack really willing to risk jail just to avoid this session?" I asked. She hesitated before answering. "There's no session today, Robin. I'll call you later." She unlocked the door, signaling me to leave. As I stepped out, I glanced back. Her expression was rattled. With unexpected free time on my hands, I drove to the church. Tomorrow was the private gathering, and I was eager. I planned to experience something new. Bruce and Terry Kagan would both be involved, making it an unforgettable night. The thought alone had me trembling with anticipation. But when I arrived, Bruce was on the phone looking furious. "That was Terry," he muttered, rubbing his forehead. "Club's off tonight. Jack knows everything." My stomach dropped. He's threatening to involve his friend Mike Starr. If this gets out, a lot of people are going down. Bruce exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. "You know what?" he said, his tone colder than I'd ever heard it. "I'm starting to regret getting involved with you, Robin. You're not worth all this trouble." I froze. Just a few months ago, he couldn't get enough of me. He constantly compared me to Cheryl, always putting me above her. But now, just because Jack was fighting back, I was suddenly disposable? That evening after dinner, my lawyer called. "The hearing's been moved up," he said. "It's happening tomorrow." "Why?" "The only time I've seen a judge rush a hearing like this is when the petitioner withdraws their divorce request." Could Jack be facing contempt charges? "Doubtful," Bieber said. "If that were the case, we'd be required to be there too. Just get some rest. I've got a good feeling about tomorrow." Bruce's mood lifted when he heard the news. Maybe someone had pressured Jack into backing down. There were powerful figures caught up in this. Jack might have had guts, but he had no real influence. That night, the Zex was incredible. I lost count of how many times I came. Bruce, Cheryl, and I spent an unforgettable night together. By 10 the next morning, I was seated in Judge Kagan's courtroom. Jack wasn't there, but his lawyer was, along with another man. Will Jack face any consequences for not showing up? I whispered to Justin. Unlikely, he replied, glancing at the unfamiliar man. He's probably licking his wounds. What I don't understand is why Graham Nash is here. He hasn't set foot in a courtroom in years. Something's going on. Judge Kagan entered and called the court to order. Jack's lawyer, Nash, and Justin approached the bench, whispering among themselves for nearly 20 minutes. When Justin finally returned to my side, his face was troubled. Before I could ask what was happening, the gavel struck. In 90 days, the marriage of Jack and Robin Erickson will be officially dissolved, Kagan announced. Robin Erickson will receive no spousal support. Mr. Erickson will transfer 25% of his retirement funds and 40% of their liquid assets to her. I turned to Justin, stunned. What just happened? Kagan granted Jack's petition, he muttered. The next thing I knew, I was coming to with an EMT steadying me. Within 3 weeks, everything crumbled. The Spouse Swappers Club was exposed in the media. Judge Kagan was removed from the bench and her husband was charged with pill trafficking. Justin Bieber? Disbarred. Turned out he had been secretly sleeping with male clients and deliberately botching cases for Kagan. He was also linked to a high school pill ring. Dr. Landers was ordered to refund her patients. A few days later, she was found dead in her bathtub, wrists slit. Her husband was slumped over the toilet with a bang wound to the head. Bruce lost his position in the ministry. His severance barely covered the cost of relocating. Cheryl, sick of his insatiable Zex drive, divorced him after catching him pleasuring himself while watching their neighbors. He blamed me for everything, then left without a backward glance. With nowhere else to go, I moved into a tiny apartment with Cheryl while we both tried to rebuild our lives. I used most of my divorce settlement to set up utilities and hire her a decent lawyer. Bruce, desperate and out of options, tried to hire Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young for legal representation. They refused. He ended up with some no-name attorney he found in a classified ad. Cheryl destroyed him in court. Last I heard, he was preaching somewhere in Iowa. After my divorce was finalized, I found a job at an accounting firm. Cheryl got work with a contractor and eventually started dating one of his employees. I didn't date. I wanted Jack. Sometimes I would walk past our old house hoping to see him. One day I saw a sold sign out front. It shattered me. That night, I drowned my sorrow in Haagen-Dazs and Chips Ahoy. While walking past the frozen food aisle at the grocery store, I saw him. Jack. He was reaching for a frozen pizza. Before I even realized what I was doing, I was on my knees, sobbing, pleading with him in the middle of the store. I don't even remember what I said. But when I finally looked up, Jack was staring at me, clearly uncomfortable. A small crowd had gathered. He smirked, then pointed at his backside and said, "Eat my dirt and die." Then he walked away.
Las Vegas, Nevada, 4 years later. I pulled into my driveway, eyeing the overgrown lawn. I'd mow it Saturday at dawn before the Vegas heat kicked in. The door barely shut before my wife's arms wrapped around me, her lips pressing against mine. "Hey, baby," she murmured. "Did you keep the tourists from scamming the slot machines today?" I chuckled. Same old Brenda. "And next month, when you graduate, you'll be slaving for the man, too. At least until you knock me up," she smirked. "Studying tonight?" "Yeah, but I gotta watch Samantha around you. She can't stop staring at your A," I laughed. "Had a neighbor like that once, always watching me mow the lawn," Brenda smirked. "Especially Robin. Her loss," she said, shaking her head. "My gain." "Damn right." I grabbed my keys. I'll grab a few pizzas. You college girls eat like linebackers." She kissed me again as I walked out. Brenda and I had been married 3 years. I reached Vegas 3 days after leaving Stonemore. Some people probably think I'm an a-hole for leaving Robin stranded in that motel in Casper, Wyoming. But I would never trust that cheating witch again. She was barely asleep when I slipped out, paid for 3 nights, and disappeared. Made it to Utah before sunrise. 2 days later, I rolled into Vegas. Within a week, I had a job and an apartment. Sold my house and cashed my retirement. Bought a new place. 2 weeks later, Brenda arrived. She had already enrolled at UNLV. While waiting for my house to sell, I spent a lot of time with her. At first, she'd check in on me, bring food, watch movies, go out on weekends. The more time we spent together, the more I liked her. And the best part, I wasn't ashamed to be seen with her. When I told her about Robin groveling in the store, she teared up. "Hey," I said, "I have no plans to go back to her." I took her hands. Brenda, I'm falling for you. If you can stand being with an old guy like me. Before I finished, she jumped on me. That night, after 3 rounds, the first fevered and hot, the next 2 slow and loving, I laid out my plan. I expected Tom and Jerry to flip. Instead, Tom nodded. Jack, he said, you've always been rough around the edges, but I can't imagine our daughter in better hands. I froze. Jerry grinned. Brenda had been their daughter all along. A year after we moved to Vegas, she learned new makeup techniques, changed her hair. She'd always been pretty, but now, she glowed. We married after her freshman year. I told her, if you ever meet a guy your age, I'll understand. She ignored me for a week. You stupid a hole, she finally said. I've only had eyes for one man. She grabbed my face. I watched the wrong woman throw you away. I'll be damned if I let you go. I still keep in touch with people back home. Cheryl married a tile guy and moved to California. Robin? She crawled back to Stonemore 2 years after I stranded her in Wyoming. Married a rancher. A year later, he caught her running a train with 3 of his ranch hands. Booted her. Figures. The pimply-faced kid behind the counter handed me my pizzas. If I got home fast enough, Brenda would probably jump me before her study group showed up. Me? I'd retreat to my den, kick back, and watch the Rockies on my MLB pass. From one risky woman to another. My life is as smooth as a well-oiled machine in the morning.